My son-in-law slammed his fist on my kitchen table, then pushed a stack of papers toward me. "Sign the house over to us, or you'll regret it." My daughter stood beside him, without saying a single word. They both believed this house already belonged to them. What they didn't know was that my lawyer had been preparing something for months, and before this was over, everything they planned would collapse. If you enjoy emotional family dramas filled with betrayal, shocking twists, justice, and unforgettable endings, make sure to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Every week, I share stories that prove the truth always finds its way to the surface. Now let me tell you how my own daughter almost helped steal the home I spent 40 years building. My name is William Carter. I'm 68 years old. I've lived in the same little White House for over 40 years. Every wall, every window, every tree in the backyard carries a memory of my late wife, Helen. We bought this house when we were young. Back then, we had almost nothing. I worked double shifts as an electrician. Helen worked evenings at the public library. We skipped vacations. We repaired old furniture instead of buying new. Every dollar we saved went into this house. To us, it wasn't property. It was our life's work. Helen passed away 3 years ago, cancer. Losing her was like losing half of myself. The house became quiet, too quiet. Sometimes I still caught myself making 2 cups of coffee only to remember she wasn't there anymore. Our daughter, Emily, visited often after Helen died. At first, she seemed genuinely concerned. "Dad, you shouldn't stay here all alone." I appreciated her kindness, or at least, I thought it was kindness. Emily had married Jason 5 years earlier. Jason was charming when we first met. He always smiled, always complimented people, always offered to help. But over time, I realized something. His kindness only appeared when money was involved. Every conversation somehow became about investments, real estate, property values, inheritance. At family dinners, he'd casually ask, "So, William, have you ever thought about downsizing?" I'd smile. "No. I like my home." He'd nod politely, but I noticed the disappointment in his eyes. One Sunday, Jason walked through my living room, looking around carefully. He measured the walls with his eyes, looked out every window, then walked into the backyard. Finally, he said, "This neighborhood has become expensive. You could sell this place for over $1 million. I laughed. I didn't buy it to sell it. His smile faded. Months passed. The visits became more frequent. But something had changed. Emily barely asked how I was feeling anymore. Instead, she asked questions like, "Have you updated your will? Who has access to your bank accounts? Where do you keep important documents?" I answered as little as possible. Something inside me didn't feel right. One evening, my neighbor Martha stopped me while I was checking the mailbox. She looked nervous. "William, I hope you don't mind me saying this. What is it?" "I overheard Jason talking outside yesterday." My heart skipped, he said. "It's only a matter of time before that house belongs to us." For a moment, I couldn't breathe. "Surely," she had misunderstood. "Didn't she? That night, I couldn't sleep." Helen's photograph sat on the nightstand beside me. I stared at it for hours, then quietly whispered, "I hope I'm wrong. I hope our daughter would never do something like this." A week later, Emily invited me to dinner. Everything seemed normal. Jason cooked steak. Emily smiled more than usual. They were almost too friendly. Halfway through dinner, Jason placed a brochure on the table. It showed a luxury gated community. He grinned. "We're thinking about buying a bigger house." "Congratulations." He leaned closer. "Actually, we were hoping you'd help." I looked confused. "Help how?" He smiled. "Your house." I thought he meant borrowing money against it. Instead, he calmly said, "You don't really need such a big place anymore. You should transfer it to Emily now. Eventually, it'll be hers anyway." I stared at him, thinking I'd heard him wrong. "I'm not giving anyone my house." Jason chuckled. "You'll change your mind." When I returned home, I sat alone in Helen's old rocking chair. For the first time, I didn't feel safe inside my own home. Not because of strangers, because of family. The next morning, I called the only man I completely trusted, my lawyer, Michael Harris. He had been my friend for over 30 years. I told him everything. He listened quietly, then asked only one question. "William, do you trust your daughter?" I closed my eyes. After a long silence, I answered honestly, "I don't know anymore." Michael sighed. "Then it's time we prepare, just in case." At that moment, I had no idea. That decision would save not only my home, but everything Helen and I had spent our lives building. The next morning, I met Michael Harris at his law office. He greeted me with the same calm smile he'd worn for over 30 years. But the moment he saw my face, that smile disappeared. He closed the office door. "William, tell me everything." For nearly an hour I told him about Jason. The comments, the pressure, the questions about my will, the conversation at dinner, even what my neighbor had overheard. Michael listened without interrupting. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair. "I was afraid this day might come." I frowned. "What do you mean?" He opened one of his file cabinets and pulled out a thick blue folder. "I've been handling estate cases for almost 40 years. I've seen families torn apart over houses, businesses, and inheritances. But greed always follows the same pattern. They stop treating you like family and start treating you like paperwork." His words hit me harder than I expected, because deep down I knew he was right. Michael folded his hands. "William, I'm going to ask you something difficult. If you passed away tomorrow, would you be completely confident your daughter would honor your wishes?" I looked down. Memories flooded my mind. Emily learning to ride her first bicycle, Helen clapping when Emily graduated, our family Christmas dinners, birthday cakes, vacations, laughter. Then, Jason entered those memories. Slowly, everything changed. I sighed. "I honestly don't know," Michael nodded. "That's answer enough." He slid a document across the desk. "This is not a new will. It's something much stronger." I looked confused. "What is it?" "A property protection agreement. If anyone attempts to pressure, threaten, manipulate, or deceive you into transferring ownership, the transfer immediately becomes legally challengeable." I looked at him. "So my house stays protected?" He smiled. "As long as you don't sign anything under pressure." I signed the documents. For the first time in weeks, I felt a little safer. 3 days later, Emily called. "Dad, we're coming over Sunday. I'll make lunch." Her voice sounded unusually cheerful, almost rehearsed. I agreed. Sunday afternoon arrived. Emily and Jason walked in carrying expensive desserts and flowers. Jason smiled wider than I'd ever seen. "You deserve to be spoiled." Something felt wrong. He'd never brought flowers before. Lunch was strangely pleasant. Jason complimented my cooking. Emily laughed at my old stories. For a brief moment, I almost believed I'd imagined everything. Then Jason reached into his leather briefcase. There it was, a thick stack of legal papers. He carefully placed them on the dining table. My heart sank. Emily quietly avoided looking at me. Jason smiled confidently. "Nothing complicated, just a few documents." I didn't touch them. "What documents?" he answered casually. "Property transfer papers. You sign today, and everything becomes much easier." I slowly looked at my daughter, Emily. "You knew about this," she whispered. "We're only thinking about your future." "My future?" I asked. "My future. Or yours?" She couldn't answer. Jason leaned forward. "William, let's be realistic. You're almost 70. This house is too much responsibility. It makes more sense for us to own it now." I quietly replied, "It already makes perfect sense. It belongs to me." His smile disappeared. "You don't understand." "No, I understand perfectly. I'm just not signing." Jason suddenly slammed his hand onto the table. The dishes rattled. "I've been patient. But you're making this difficult." Emily quickly whispered. "Jason, calm down." He ignored her. "You don't need this house. You don't even use half the rooms. I've already spoken to a realtor." I stared at him. "You what?" He smiled proudly. "I wanted to know how much we'd get after selling it." For a moment, I couldn't believe what I was hearing. He wasn't planning to live here. He had already planned to sell the home Helen and I had built together. I slowly stood up. "This conversation is over." Jason stood too. His voice became cold. "If you don't sign willingly, we'll find another way." Those words sent a chill through my entire body. Emily finally looked frightened. "Jason, stop!" He didn't. He grabbed the papers, pushed them directly in front of me, then placed a pen on top. "Sign." I calmly pushed the papers back. "No." He pushed them toward me again. "Sign." My hands remained folded. I said no. The room became silent. Jason stared at me with anger. Then, without warning, he swept everything off the dining table. Plates shattered across the floor. Emily screamed. I stepped backward. Jason pointed directly at me. "You've had this house long enough. It's our turn now." I looked him straight in the eyes. "No, it's never your turn, as long as I'm alive." Jason laughed. "You really think one signature won't happen?" I quietly smiled. "It won't," he frowned. "Why are you smiling?" I looked at the clock on the wall, then toward the front window. "Because you're about 5 minutes too late." Jason looked confused. What does that mean? Just then, a black luxury sedan stopped outside my house. Emily slowly walked to the window. Her face instantly turned pale. Dad, someone's here. I smiled calmly. I know, that's my lawyer. And the moment Michael Harris stepped through my front door carrying a thick leather briefcase, Jason's confident smile disappeared for the very first time. The front door slowly opened. Michael Harris stepped inside carrying a thick leather briefcase. He wasn't in a hurry. He wasn't nervous. He looked exactly the way he always did, calm, confident, prepared. Jason crossed his arms. And who exactly are you? Michael smiled politely. I'm William Carter's attorney. The room instantly became silent. Jason laughed. A lawyer? You really called a lawyer over a family discussion. Michael calmly placed his briefcase on the dining table. This stopped being a family discussion the moment you attempted to pressure my client into signing legal documents. Jason's smile faded. Michael slowly removed several folders. Every page had colored tabs. Every document was neatly organized. He looked directly at Jason. Before another word is spoken. I suggest you read these. Jason grabbed the first folder. His confidence quickly disappeared. What is this? Michael answered. A property protection agreement. Signed last week, properly witnessed, properly registered, and completely enforceable. Jason looked confused. So what? Michael smiled. So, even if William signed your papers today, they could immediately be challenged in court because clear evidence of pressure already exists. Emily looked shocked. What? Michael nodded. Everything that happened here today has legal consequences, Jason frowned. What evidence? Michael calmly reached into his briefcase again, then placed a small digital recorder on the table. Jason's face immediately turned pale. I advised William to record every conversation involving his property. He pressed play. Jason's own voice filled the room. Sign or we'll find another way. You've had this house long enough. It's our turn now. The room became completely silent. Emily slowly covered her mouth. She looked at Jason. You told me. We were only going to talk. Jason couldn't answer. Michael turned the recorder off. That recording alone would raise serious concerns in court, but we're not finished. He opened another folder. Inside were printed photographs. Jason standing outside the house with a real estate agent. Jason measuring rooms. Jason pointing toward the backyard. Even screenshots of emails discussing a future sale. William hadn't imagined any of it. Jason had already been planning everything. Michael looked at Jason. You contacted a realtor before you even owned the property. Jason swallowed hard. I was only asking questions. Michael calmly replied. The emails suggest otherwise. Richard? No, not Richard. There is no Richard here. Emily looked at Jason with tears in her eyes. You lied to me. You told me we would renovate Dad's house. Jason looked away. Emily continued. You were planning to sell it? Jason remained silent. That silence answered everything. I quietly sat in Helen's favorite chair. For weeks, I had blamed myself, wondering if I had become suspicious for no reason. Now, the truth was sitting right in front of me. Emily slowly walked toward me, her eyes filled with tears. Dad, I'm so sorry. I ignored every warning because I loved him. I thought we were planning a future together. She broke down crying. I never knew he wanted the house more than he wanted our family. I gently held her hand. I believe you, but trust has to be rebuilt. She nodded through her tears. I know. Jason suddenly became angry again. This is ridiculous. It's just a house. For the first time, I raised my voice. No, it isn't. It's the home where your mother-in-law and I spent 40 years building our lives. It's where Emily took her first steps. It's where we celebrated birthdays, cried through funerals, and dreamed about the future. You only saw walls. I saw memories. Michael closed the final folder. Mr. Jason Collins, if my client chooses, he has enough evidence to seek legal action regarding intimidation and attempted coercion. Jason's face turned white. For the first time that day, he realized he wasn't in control anymore. Without another word, he grabbed his jacket, looked at Emily. Are you coming? Emily slowly shook her head. No, I'm staying with my father. Jason stared at her. You'd choose him over me? Emily answered quietly. No, I'm choosing. The person who never stopped choosing me. Jason stood frozen. Then, he walked out the front door, alone. The door closed behind him. And just like that, the man who believed my house already belonged to him walked away with absolutely nothing. A few weeks later, Emily filed for divorce. It wasn't easy, but she told me something I'll never forget. I almost lost the only parent I have left, trying to keep the wrong person happy. 6 months later, the house felt warm again. Emily visited every weekend. Not to ask about documents, not to discuss inheritance, just to drink coffee, help in the garden, and tell me about her new job. Little by little, we rebuilt what greed had nearly destroyed. One sunny afternoon, Michael stopped by. We sat on the porch where Helen and I used to watch the sunset. He smiled. "You know, you didn't really save your house." I laughed. "What do you mean?" He looked at Emily planting flowers in the front yard. "You saved your family." I looked at Helen's favorite rose bushes, the same ones she planted years ago. The wind gently moved their petals, and for the first time since she passed away, the house didn't feel empty anymore. It felt like home again. People often think, the greatest inheritance is a house, or money, or land. They're wrong. The greatest inheritance is teaching your children that integrity is worth more than property, and that love should never be traded for greed. Because a house can always be rebuilt, but once trust is broken, it takes a lifetime to repair. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with someone who believes family should be built on love, not inheritance. And always remember, the people who chase your property rarely value your memories, but the people who truly love you will protect both. The end.